Welcome to the Success Story Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Clary. On this podcast, I have candid interviews with execs, celebrities, politicians, and other notable figures, all who have achieved success through both wins and losses, to learn more about their life, their ideas, and their insights. I sit down with leaders and mentors and unpack their story to help pass those lessons on to others through both experiences and tactical strategy for business professionals, entrepreneurs, and everyone in between. Without further ado, another episode of the Success Story Podcast. Thanks again for joining us today. I'm sitting down with Mike Liut, who is a former professional ice hockey goaltender and current managing director of Octagon Hockey. So following his extremely impressive 15-year career, the Connecticut Hockey Hall of Famer earned his Juris Doctorate from Detroit College of Law, pivoting from professional ice hockey player to lawyer. Today, he is responsible for the negotiation of over $328 million in active NHL contracts, managing the contracts of some of the most prolific and well-known players in the NHL. Mike, thank you so much for joining. Walk me through, starting with where you first started playing hockey, where that passion came from, all the way through to what you're doing now at Octagon.
I played in a little town outside of Toronto in the 60s, and it was called Woodbridge, which is now...
I know Woodbridge. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So it was a town of 3,000 people, and maybe we drew from 15,000 people to Kleinburg and so forth. But we would have our banquet at the end of the year, and the commissioner or convener of the league or association, our entry into the OMHA, said that education is important, and and he gave some denominator, which was rather large, make it to the NHL. And I was stunned. And I remember thinking, well, he didn't say zero. So, and I think that that's relatively consistent with players that, that they've all, I think at one point had that conscious at a young age. And maybe, it's not something that you express and tell the world. It's just in your heart, right? This is going to do that. And it's certainly naive, but I mean, if you can't dream, right? And that's sort of the seeds of success. I think you have to come to a point where you decide this is what I want to do. And whether you actually do it or not, I don't know. But you certainly try and leave no stone unturned. Obviously, there's lots of people that play, and the pyramid gets rather small. But I won't even go as far as to say self-belief. I won't get into the psychology of it. It's just something that you do. You start in a direction, and you move forward. And along the way, there's always going to be people who have a significant impact on your career, and likely goes all the way, runs the gamut. And I certainly have that. When I'm talking to players that I represent, have represented them, and we talk about this process of moving from amateur hockey to pro to making it in the NHL, staying in the NHL, I say it's a fluke. A part of it is just a fluke. You just had enough good things going on in your life, and you met enough people that it happened. And I look at coaches, and I had a number of coaches, that just, I don't know, they believed in you, they saw something in you, they gave you the opportunity or allowed you an opportunity. And an opportunity can be fleeting, right? So it's what you do with it. But I had, Ron Mason. I decided to go to college. I had Ron Mason, who winds up being when he retired, he was the winningest coach in college hockey history. He didn't recruit me. We kind of found each other. He had a profound effect. I'm playing pro hockey, Floyd Smith. I'm in the WHA, and he comes up to me and he gives me the, "Kid, you think you can play 70 games? Donnie Edwards played 70 games for me in Buffalo, right? I hadn't played 25 games in a year." And you're like, "Oh, I don't know, coach. I never played more than 25, but hey, I'd sure like the opportunity. And, that's how it works. There's a significant degree of good fortune, but more importantly, good people that had a major impact on your career. And it doesn't stop, right? One of my teammates my first year was Pat Staple, and just passed away. Great guy, right? I mean, really understood the game, thought about the game. And, we came from college. Nobody really knew that much about college, even though, players like Red Berenson already played and retired. It's still sort of U.S. college hockey was an unknown. Pat said to me one day, everybody in hockey will give you a reason why you should fail. It's just up to you whether you believe them or not. Nothing could be more true than that, right? In hockey, we say player's too small, too slow, he's timid. They come up with every flaw that they can, right? Instead of focusing on what they can do, right, and then deciding whether they can use that, it's the flaws that jump out at them. But really, it's just somebody's opinion that says, hey, I don't think you can do it. And if you believe them, you won't do it, right? So that's been as much for me what I remember, right? I have two conversations with my dad about playing hockey or pro hockey, and so I graduated from Bowling Green. I'm going to start my pro career, and he said to me, or I said to him, "Hey, Dad, what if I'm not good enough? I mean, after all this, what? It just ends right when I want it to start." And his immediate response was, well, I hope you're man enough to look in the mirror and just accept what it is and move on with the rest of your life. Because no matter how good you are and how long you think you can play hockey, there's still going to be the rest of your life. You're not going to do this forever. So it was that this is what I want to do. Okay, here's the support. Go and do it, right? And know that you're going to have to do something else. That's why you went to school, right? This is not going to last forever. And, that's all those little pieces, the coaches and your parents and teammates that have this, they come to you at the right time with the right words to encourage you, to remove the anxiety, to, allow you to go forward, right? Whether it's Boyd Smith opening the door or my dad saying, hey, if you don't make it, it's okay, right? Lots of people don't make it. You played a long time, right? And if you don't make it, or if you do make it, you still have to do the rest of what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So don't lose sight of that. And it's those are, and to bring that really full circle, I had ruptured discs in my back. It was time. I was going to be 37. My career was over. I knew it. The cost of trying to continue far too great, physically, emotionally, family, the whole deal. So I said, my dad asked me, he said, are you going to go to law school? And I was like, wow, I don't know, Dad. I said, if I go to law school, in 3 years, I'm going to be 40. He just on a dime looked at me and said, if you don't go to law school in 3 years, how old are you going to be?
40. Doesn't change.
It was like, it's the perspective that, that your support group brings. And here's the thing that, I left hockey thinking, I can't believe that I survived that long, right? And it really, to a certain degree, is just a matter of survival.
15 years, right? You're 15 years, yeah.
And you just keep going until you can't go any further. But here it is in a nutshell. It's just like, start, go and do it. I don't know if you're going to be successful. Don't waste your time thinking about it. Just start, right? And there's things in life that I like movies, Finding Forrester, right, where Sean Connery is helping a young kid learn to write. And he just starts banging on the typewriter. And his whole thing was just start typing. The thoughts will come to you. So just start in your career. I don't know if this is going to be your career. You're going to step sideways to move forward. You might have to go back to change direction. It doesn't matter. Just start and invest as much as you have to invest in it, keep working it, and keep moving forward. Don't bother looking right or left. Keep going forward, move forward. And that's sort of, when I look back at it, 64, I'm looking backwards saying, that's all it was. I didn't think that I would be doing what I'm doing now. It was the last thing that I wanted to do. Didn't want to do it. I just happened to fall into really a great company, a good, very good friend of mine, Brian Lawton, had started with Octagon, and I'm going to start this hockey division for them with my little fledgling company, and why don't you do it with me? And had been approached by a few players to handle their free agent contract that summer. I just left the PA. Why not? Right? Let's move in here. I thought I'd do it a few years. Right? And then I don't know. And one thing morphed into another, and 22 years later, here we are.
It's a really incredible story, because I think that a lot of people have, first of all, not a lot of people achieve the level of success in sports, in hockey, and go pro and get paid to do what they love. But then also, you manage to transition into a second successful career managing the contracts of right now I looked at a Forbes article. It said $328 million in active NHL contract. I don't know if that's gone up or down or whatnot, but you're managing a fair amount of player livelihoods and responsibility there. How did you transition? So it seems effortlessly, but
it definitely wasn't effortless. At one point, our friends asked my wife if we were still married, because they never saw me with her. So it had that. My goal when I retired from playing hockey, strategy was not to take a lot of time off. Financially, we weren't in that spot, right? I met with, again, I was talking to Bob Goodnow. We just went through a strike. I was very involved with the Players Association when I played for the last 6 or so years. I found it very interesting. In talking to him, he said, you should go to law school. And he said, if you go to law school in 20 years, you'll look back on it, and you'll say it's the best thing that I've done, best decision I've made. And it didn't take 20 years. I enjoyed the experience. It allowed me to be at home and still moving forward. So it was, a time when I had whatever I was going to set aside, and you're not making any money and you're spending a lot of money, but we had set ourselves up to be able to afford a transition. And it was, again, there's another individual coming into your life, getting you pointed in a direction. And that's important. I've often said that to, I know hockey players, but I would say athletes in general, the same principle. The guys who've played a long time, right, and they've reached a reasonable level of success that allows them to play a long time, they can get up every day and they can grind, and they can be successful. They can take direction. They understand how it is to work within an organization. When you get out of hockey, the issue is this. You play hockey, you have Pee Wee, Bantam, midget, junior, or college, AHL, NHL. The stepping stones are there. You just have to follow. When you retire, the path is gone. You don't know where to go. And it's the other part to it emotionally is you immediately realize that you no longer belong in that group, right? That's an earned society that you get to play in. And when you're no longer a player, you're a retired player, you're an alum, all those good things. But in your heart, you know that you don't walk through that dressing room door anymore. That's not your spot, right? So you're dealing with all of that, and it feels isolating. It did to me. It felt like I was completely isolated. So it's important to have something to come back to and to start moving in a direction. For me, it was going back to school. There were a few nights reading in the library till 10 o'clock at night where you just look at the ceiling and go, what have I got myself into? Fortunately, I told enough people that I couldn't quit, that I was committed to the program. And And then it just, okay, now I've got a degree. Now I graduated, I passed the bar, and now my dad looks at me and he says, well, now you got to figure out how to make some money with that degree. It's not worth much if you can't do that. So, I was with the Players Association. We had a grand plan. It didn't quite work out that way. I didn't stay with it, but, you keep, this presented itself, and when there's a door opens, another one might close. But whatever your decision is, it's a decision that you make where I'm going to step forward and I'm going to make it the right decision. Right? That's the other piece to it. You can't look for the right decision. You have to find something that you find appealing, and when you step in that direction, for the time that you're there, you have to make it a great decision. You have to put your all into it. So it's not, I haven't been in school in 16 years. I'm going to go to law school. I have to pass the entrance exam, the LSAT. I took a course. It didn't make any sense. I was like, whatever. And it's all, it's a time test, right? It's, you have to move. And there's a lot of questions and not much time to answer anything. So I would get up every morning, kids would go off to school. I would sit down and I would do an LSAT exam every day, or half of it, or a third of it, whatever it was. I forget how it was broken into sections. But I would do a section at a time and make sure that I could answer a section of questions within the allotted time. And I did it every day for probably a month or two, right? And you just pound away at it until you start to, you get your rhythm. You get your rhythm in terms of the cadence of answering questions. You get a feel for the type of questions and where your weaknesses are. And that's just preparation. So, it's like everything was a book. Everything I learned, everything I learned in life, you learn before you're 5 or something. It was like that. It's like everything I know in life, I learned when I was, by the time, whatever, right, through hockey. So same lessons, transfer. You take the good experiences and you build upon them.
And then after that, so you have your JD. You never actually, did you ever practice law, or did you just go right into managing? And I guess a lot of the contracts actually could require some legal revision or whatnot, right, or supervision. So did you?
Yeah, I stayed with the Players Association. So I was working part-time with the Players Association while I was going to school. I was also coaching at Michigan as a volunteer goalie coach, which was a lot of fun, but just a hobby. Yeah. And then after graduation or writing the bar, then I stayed with the PA, did a lot of distance work, working from home, the things that we're doing now. And then, a couple of years after that, I decided to leave the PA, and then that was the choice, right? So, and I did have a choice. I could have said, I could have practiced law in earnest. And looking back on it, it's the one thing that, in a way, I wish I had, right? So when I have a young person call me or contact me, however he contacts, and says, I'm going to law school, I want to be a player agent. And I'm telling him it's an end game. It's not the beginning. You went to law school to be a lawyer. Now that you passed the bar exam, now go be a lawyer. Because when you pass the bar exam, you have all this black letter law, but you don't know how to do it. And you have to learn how to execute as a lawyer. And I tell them to go find the most complicated, involved law firm that you can work for and dive into it and put your 80 hours in or whatever it is every week and really grind through it. At the end of 5 years, if you want to make a lateral or move in another direction, then you can make that decision at that time. But first, develop some skills outside of, you went to law school, you passed the bar exam, okay, you're a smart enough person, now go develop some skills and experience. And then if you want to come to the sports in general, actually, then fine. But sports is essentially, it's a bit of a dead end world. Like, it's here, and where do you go from here? Mm-hmm. I think that there is something after a sports career and management, whatever, if you've got a skill set coming into it. So that's my advice. I would have liked to have done it. I started representing players, a few years after law school. again, it's something I started. I had the background for it with everything that I've done, playing the Players Association, practicing a little bit. And then I moved into representing these players. And then within Octagon, I wound up having the opportunity to do a few other things. When we had the lockout in 0405, I was participating in other areas using my law degree, and then I eventually started managing the hockey division. We expanded it. We were in a good position because of the stability of Octagon. We were Alan Walsh joined us, and shortly after that, we kept expanding, adding a few other players with him, Rick Follett, and then Andy Scott, and we're growing our team. And then Ben Hankinson joined us with Chris McAlpine with another agency, and we just your success is a lot of hard work. It took a lot of years to get there. It took law school. It took a couple of years at the Players Association. It took a handful of years to build up a practice, and along the way, the good fortune of having the opportunity with Octagon, having the bandwidth to add additional agents, and very quickly expand a footprint from 10, 12 players with Brian Lawton to 100 players with Octagon. And then the attrition, and we have a mature clientele. It goes up, it goes down. But we've had a chance to build an organization, right, that has a significant impact in the National Hockey League and on our clients. And so our philosophy, if you will, is that we're managing their careers both on and off the ice. No, I'm not on the ice, but they're
they are
outside of their hockey. Because it's important for players athletes come into professional sports. They'll have a number of great things come their way, including it's going to be very lucrative. But the key is, what do you leave the game with? That's critical, because they, regardless of how much money they make, and there's much more money in the game now than there was when we played, and they can retire. The problem is they're so good at what they do. They're so used to being in the saddle and being in control and having a material impact. They're not just going to ride off in the sunset and say, okay, I'm going to do nothing. I'm 37 years old and I'm retired. Never going to happen, right? They're going to have to do something. So, if they have enough money, that's fine. They can transition. If they don't have enough money, they're going to have to create another career. And that's been a big part of our success.
And I'm curious now, as an agent and managing all these careers, what are some of the largest challenges that you have with the players, or the players' experience in their careers?
Well, it can run the gamut, right? I mean, it's established in themselves. I mean, players who have, Patrick Laine steps into the National Hockey League. He scores 80 goals in 2 years, right? I mean, that's, his issues are, his career is starting to establish. He's on his way. There's so many more players that have to learn the process and sort of walking them through the tough parts, the rough parts, and maybe they have to change the way they play the game. I mean, everybody that comes to pro hockey is coming with a degree of talent. They were the better players at the level they played below the NHL. So that doesn't mean that they're going to be a top six forward. They're not going to necessarily play on the power play. They're going to have to adjust. That's one of it, and one of the issues that could derail a career. Right? Mm-hmm. Then, and he's a top 10 scorer, and his career is off and running, and they're, I won't say generational, but you're not concerned too much with their on ice, and then everybody's off ice. They have challenges where we think that they're adults, right? They look like adults, they make money like adults, but they're still kids, and they have the issues that, decisions and everything else that kids make. And so you're always managing that piece of it, right? They're going to go through, they're 22, 23, 24. They're doing adult things, right? They're buying homes, they're buying cars, they're paying for colleges and things of that nature, and getting them to understand, making them financially savvy is important, right? They have to understand that this is not going to be forever. That you're making X on your contract. You're not making that number. Your partner, the government, is taking a chunk of it, and this is what it's going to cost when you're to get through your life. And they understand that, or it becomes more clear when they approach retirement, when they can see that this is going to end. And then they've got 3 children. They start adding up the cost of education and then health, all of these things. And I always tell them, you have no idea how much money you're going to spend from 35 to 55 raising your kids, right? And you just can't put your head around. So that's the gamut of of course you can get into they get married, some guys unfortunately get divorced. I mean, there's trauma in their life, right?
But they're just they're so young. I think that's like the thing that I'm pulling from this. Like, they're just so young and they have to make all these but that's with most professional athletes. Like, you see that quite a bit, like financial issues and whatnot when they retire. They're forced to grow up very quickly,
right? They grow up, they step on the ice and they look like adults, right? Because in control of their world. And then when you step off the ice or off the field or court, they're kids. They're very quickly, you can see that they're mature individuals, but they're 22, right? They just have the experience, to manage the things that they will be exposed to. And then, of course, we're in the world of branding and players, social media, and all of that can be good and bad. And, you really just try and, I don't want to say you're a surrogate parent, right? You want them to experience life, make mistakes, just not make too big a mistake. That is, that's sort of the job. That's the thing.
Now, I just have a couple more, I guess, questions related to like the industry and the state of the industry, because you're so involved in it. What do you see happening with the current pandemic, with the way we can't go into stadiums anymore and arenas and watch a game? Do you think that there's going to be major disruption, or is there plans to come to some sort of way to keep business working in the interim? What's your take on that?
The pandemic is an unknown, right? I mean, medical personnel with don't wear a mask now. It is a mask. It doesn't, and this it's so novel that everybody is guessing at how to handle it, what's going to exacerbate it, how to curtail it, and in the world of professional sports, as long as they're telling us we have to stand 6 feet apart from each other, it's very hard for me to envision how we're going to sit shoulder to shoulder with each other and watch a hockey or any sport.
Yeah,
we're in a moment where there's uncertainty is an understatement. Of course, you have to be buoyed by the amount of money being thrown at vaccines and therapeutics, and a lot of brilliant people in the world, and the more they wrestle with it, we're counting on them being able to control this. And I don't know what control means, but I think that we have to have the security that we can go to an event, not likely get sick. If we do get sick, treatable, and get out of the hospital.
And do you think the players can play even without a crowd?
I think the players can play in the proposed NHL conclusion to the 1920 season, that they can do, right? If they can get the players into the bubble and everybody is free of COVID, the players can stay in the bubble, then logically, if they don't let anybody else in the bubble, they should be okay. Can you do that for a season? I have my doubts, but you may have to start next season later in the year, December, January, and start without fans. You know, if we're on the edge of moving in that direction, much like they've done in the, you know, in our state. I'm in Michigan, right? We had some, you know, we were on the front end of it. There was New York. Our airport is heavily traveled internationally, and I think we probably got it from both sides of the world. And at one point, the county that I live in, Oakland County, had more cases than 31 other states. That's how bad it was right here. So the governor, I think, did a great job guessing, of course, drawing the line at different spots, but shepherding the state through a crisis to the point where now we're starting to open up. You know, we're still fluctuating. We still, you know, there's still flares on the western side of the state. It hit the eastern side of the state with Detroit first. And I think that'll be very much like the NHL. We may have to start next year without fans, but hoping that Canada is way ahead of the United States in terms of their management. And we have to get to a point where we slowly move in a direction that by the end of whatever the end of next year is, or whenever the end is, that we have more and more fans, and we're fully occupied when it gets to the playoffs. So, you know, I think that's probably a best case scenario, and it's going to be difficult to thread that needle, but you know, there's many businesses that are in that same, you know, it's hospitality, it's entertainment, it's the airlines. We're all going to be fine when we get to that same spot.
And I guess the last thing I want to ask you sort of some insight questions as to, you know, what you've learned over your career, but before I sort of pivot back away from NHL, you know, Octagon, what are you personally curious about in the world of NHL hockey, where the industry is going? And it could be pre-COVID, but are there any trends that you see taking off? Any things that's changing to the game that you're interested in right now, or that's relevant?
I think that I'm very fond of saying the more things change, the more they stay the same, and that we've changed a lot of the labels in the game, but the game is still 5 individuals against 5 individuals and a goalie at either end. And the game is very much about, I'm going to suppress your will with my will. And that piece of the game is never going to change. That is the essence of sports, of competition. We have moved in a direction of trying to explain what people that have been in the game see, right? And that is people who can control the puck, you can see the shift in the momentum of the game. And when you look at a team like St. Louis last year, when they win the Stanley Cup, it was just a freight train. I mean, there wasn't anything special. You wouldn't say that they overpowered teams offensively, but they played a very coordinated game, an inspired game, and a selfless game. And their spirit matched or suppressed everybody else, and they came away the winner in a closely tested final. We're going to we've tried to explain that through analytics, which is terrific. I think analytics can open some suggestions and refine the game and make it a little bit, certainly more interesting. And I think it's a help. It isn't the entire question, or the question is not entirely answered by analytics, or even it's part of. Where analytics, for me, takes on a more meaningful in a game like hockey, when it is so fluid, that it is, if they could ever perfect the player's relationship to the puck, right? So chipping the puck, chipping your jersey, they understand where you are and tracking it. And there, I think that the data that you will mine from that ability will help the game improve. It'll help players understand their deficiencies. Coaches appreciate what they're not doing structurally, and it's another layer for the fans to enjoy. Right, it becomes more interactive on a level where the real time, because I can see TV screens with all sorts of data on them, in relationship to that. And I'll give you a quick example. We would say puck possession. Analytics came up with, puck possession. If you control the puck, you have a greater chance of winning the game. Really? Thanks, Jess. We always knew that, right? There's nothing new there. But if you're going to start putting a clock on somebody controlling the puck or puck possession, if they're controlling the puck along the boards, that might be useless, right? Because you have to control the puck in the middle of the ice. So those are the things that that I look for analytics to become more informative, more accurate in their explanation of the game.
And that's starting to be something that is being incorporated more and more into the, I guess, the training strategy, or even like you mentioned, like the data points that fans can engage in. So they put these up on screen now, and they use them in coaching and training.
I think that there's no, once you have, I think you're going to continue to see that. I think there's going to be more interactive play, beyond gambling, right? I mean, that's going to be the next one. But I think it's interactive in the sense of explaining and getting people to understand the game and what's really going on. And that's technology. And we're looking at in other areas of players with wearable technology, right? So there's once you get into a situation where you're monitoring a player. Hey, you can look at it as a negative, or you can look at it as a positive. I think that I went through my career. At the end of my career, we didn't have water in the net. So if you're a goalie and the team didn't take a penalty against, you didn't have a chance to go to the bench and get a shot of water, right? Which is lunacy. You're going to go play 45 minutes and not replenish any of the fluids that you're leaking. So the wearables goes to that, right? When they can monitor. So a point I want to make was at the end of my career, we had a nutritionist come in Washington, and they took our blood, and it was mid-season, past 60% of the season was over, and so we have a consultation with her, and she said, your red blood cells are low, you're anemic, you're dehydrated. And I went, yeah, okay. Are you okay? And I said, well, this is how I feel. Right, this is how I am. This is always how I am in February. And she's looking at me like I should fall over. So monitoring those things, teams in the West Coast have had sleep coach, if you want to do it, someone that's monitoring their sleep patterns, your jet lag and nutrition and all of those things, how much you're working, how much you're, where you are in your fatigue level, and do you need to practice for 40 minutes or 20 minutes or have a day off, or we used to say you could play yourself out of shape, right? Because you're just playing the games, you actually, the games slow down. I don't know how it happens. Lawyer, not a doctor, not a biologist. I don't understand this stuff. I can just tell you that, you get to a point where you say, I feel like I'm out of shape. Now they monitor that. I see it as a huge advantage for players. If they're, they should never be afraid of stuff like that.
That's very interesting. I just love getting insights as to where like a whole industry is going and the tech that they're going to be using. So thank you for highlighting that. Because that's a lot of fun to sort of understand and interpret how that's going to change the game, and not just change the game, but like augment is probably a better word than change. Okay, I have some questions just to sort of tee up your life experience in your career. So you sort of touched on this before, but what would be some advice that you would give somebody who wanted to go into a career like yours? It could be, I would say, somebody who wants to focus after they retire, or they just want to go into sports management. You mentioned it before, but just highlight that again.
Well, I think if you're an athlete, I really think that, you're going to stay in coaching, or, you're going to work your way into management or scouting. That's fine. I mean, you have the requisite background for that. But young kids that are coming out of college and they're going to go to law school or business school, I still say you have to go and acquire skills, develop skills, acquire experience away from sports, and then bring those skills back to sports. And the best example is you look at commissioners of the various team sports leagues, and they're probably all lawyers, but they had a career, they had another career, and brought those skills to the job that they currently have. You're a lawyer, you can wind up being general counsel for an entertainment company that has a football team, baseball team, hockey team. But to jump into sports is limiting. It's a very small business, right? You have ticket sales, you have sponsorships, you have advertising. It touches on everything, but it's a small business, right? It's a small business. So your experiences are limited, and it's a great job, right? I mean, it's something that's attractive because people identify with it. But there's and depending on what your goals are and your career is, and you have to look at it that way. You have to say, okay, I'm gonna move in this direction. Is this a career, right? And if it's not a career, where do I go from here? What skills am I going to develop in this job? What experiences am I going to have, and where am I going to take that next? Or do I run this up the ladder and I'm the president of the club? So, it's essentially a process. Being successful is a amalgamation of years, right? And you're not going to go, from zero to the top of the chart. And when we look at athletes that come out of junior college and they start in the NHL, right? There's only one way to go from there, and that's down. And and either you stick, or if you can't, and then you're going the wrong direction. So when you miss a step, right, that's when trouble is on the horizon, or potentially on the horizon. Same in developing your business career, right? They say we rise to our level of incompetency. If you rise too quickly, I would think that the fall will be great. And I come back to developing players, or athletes develop into their careers. So does everybody else, every individual in their own endeavors, the process.
What is a common myth about playing professional sports that should be debunked?
It's a pretty great life. I don't know if there's anything that I would debunk. It's not easy, but it isn't always as glamorous. When you look at the numbers that people put up, and of course you're always focusing on the most successful or the highest paid individuals. But that's the top of the chart. And professional sports leagues, and even individual sports, have a series, maybe the majority of players where it isn't anything like that. That they're doing well, they're moving forward. They're going to have a second career, and it's a grind. It's, as I said, it's survival. You look back on it and you say, I can't believe I survived that long. But so it's the idea that it's always about the celebrity, and the celebrity for the very best players is definitely a two-edged sword, right? The most successful people, they essentially have limited private life because they're so recognizable. And for the players who don't rise to that level, they'll have their anonymity, but it is more of a grind. You're an individual sport player, a golfer, a tennis player. You're trying to make it in the world. You have no team. You're traveling by yourself or your small entourage. You really can't afford a big entourage. You're not staying in the best places. You don't have the capital behind you. So it is that idea that we focus on the celebrity and the money, and we forget that there's the majority of the players are not falling into that bracket.
Who rather are three of the most influential people in your life?
I think everybody says their parents. Should say their
Everyone does, but it's okay. It's a good answer.
but it happens to be. I will say this: it's sad when that isn't true, right? I think it's really important that is one of the most influential, and really the most influential. It's always going to be the people who have influence on your life are the people who have created or become intermittently or consistently part of your support. Right. So for an athlete, you can't get away from the coaches I had. I learned from the coaches that I had. I had a coach. I played junior when I was 15 years old. I wanted to go to college. That became sort of a focus. I was playing for the Toronto Marlies, were the major A team. I was playing for Markham, the junior B team. That was the graduate program. I wasn't ready to make that decision. If I had stayed with Markham, I would have been pressured to do that. The coach of Markham, even though I was going to be the starting goalie that year, Bill White, suggested I go play in Dixie. Right? He was looking out for my best interest. I learned something about selflessness there. I played for Joe Scanlon in Dixie, and he was really tough, right? And he just didn't accept it, right? Like it was a tough game, and you played tough. I went to Ron Mason, and Ron at Bowling Green was yeah, you're doing really great here. You think pro hockey is easy? You think you're ready for? I mean, I got drafted after my junior year. The draft was age 20. And I went to talk to him about it, and he gave me 15-minute litany about how I wasn't prepared and why I wasn't prepared, and that pro hockey is X, Y, and Z. And he had played in Peterborough in the Montreal Canadian organization, and it was a very sobering moment. But it was that reality check. He told me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. And then with Floyd Smith, Smith comes in and just like, here it is, it's your second year, and he gives me the reins. And, he showed a lot of confidence in that. And it flows that way. So I say Red Berenson, I say Barclay Plager, Tex Evans in Hartford for sure. I learned a lot from them, individually, or rather each individual imparted something that I could take up.
Yeah.
And, so it isn't, for me, it has never really been about an individual or three individuals. Rick Dudley in Cincinnati, Pat Staple in Cincinnati. They're just different people that came into my life when I was in that my formative professional years, and even on the way out, right? We're with Bob Goodnow. I mean, you need that. You have to have a support group, right? I think every successful person has that group of people, whether it's three people or it's clusters of people. It's always been the clusters outside of my parents. Beyond that smaller cluster, it was a cluster of 5 or 7, and the cluster of 4 or 5 over here, and the rest is up to the individual.
And what are some resources, books, podcasts, whatever you enjoy consuming that has helped you along the way?
Well, going to law school was
that's a good one.
a lot of reading, and it also destroys your interest in reading when you're done with that program, because that's 5 pages. Or I think they say 10 pages an hour. That's the most you can absorb. So that was a grind, but I liked that. The experience was great. I think that studying law should be more incorporated. The basic idea of studying law and the Socratic method should be incorporated, even though we're losing it at most law schools, should be incorporated in undergraduate or below. I think it's just linear thinking and the ability to pull yourself back and consider all of the arguments, or to develop the idea of two competing thoughts in your head at the same time. That was, after playing hockey, hockey's a grind. You get dumped into it, and you don't see much of the world, right, from September to wherever you finish. And then there's the summer, you try to enjoy whatever free time you have, and then you're back at it. And after 15 years, I just felt like I was a bowl of mush. And so law school was, a moment to re-educate myself. And after that, I like history, right? So I like reading about individuals in history and about moments in time, even if it's a historical, and I won't say quite a historical fiction. It isn't. It's historical, but there's lots of blanks filled in. So I think so. You're really reading about individuals, right? And that's been something that I've enjoyed doing. It's more than pleasure. I'm getting something out of it. I took a negotiating workshop, last I forget when it was, probably November, December of 2019, right? So I did it for a variety of reasons. One of which was, from a corporate standpoint, I was going through the experience, but I actually learned a lot of that. It crystallized some moments and things that you naturally do, and identified some things that you're naturally weak at. So the idea is that you're going to learn. It can be formal in an education. It can be informal in just the things that you are interested in, and you try to learn from it, right? And you're always looking to improve on your skill set. So I go back to, hey, you've got some formal training, now go and find some experience and develop skills and really understand what you can and can't do, right? And play to your strengths.
Good. And then just one lesson that you would tell your younger self.
My younger self?
Yes.
I said your younger son. I said I already told him everything.
Oh, you could tell, or you know what? You probably tell him the same lesson, but
yeah. I would tell a younger self not to be deterred by the adversity. Right? You're going to get knocked down, and we all know that. It's not whether you get knocked down, but whether you get up.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you do get knocked down, it knocks a chunk off you. Right? And I would say that there are moments in my career, both on the ice and off the ice, where negative experiences, sometimes there's a residual effect that you don't shake off. And I would say that no matter how bad the experience, find something good from it and never think about it again, and never let it deter you from being aggressive or shying away from that same opportunity. Right? Look for, essentially, you're going to have some bad experiences, right? You're going to lose, right? And wherever that loss occurs, go back at that same issue, right? Do it until you win.
I love that.
We tend to shy away from that. We're not sure we want to go and challenge ourselves again.
Mm-hmm. And the last question. What does success mean to you?
Well, let's get money on the table, right? Because money makes the world go round. So I'm not going to give you a theoretical answer and have somebody say, it's really about money, isn't it? Okay, so let's put that out there. But it is the very much like people talk about retirement, right? Are you going to retire and just do nothing and play golf and or tennis or find whatever your hobby is? And say, oh, they're afraid of that, right? It's about doing something that's meaningful. It's important, impactful, right? Even a little bit. And it doesn't have to be money, right? It could be no money, philanthropic. So I think being successful is looking back and saying, I had an impact on that. Now, you're always going to say, well, I could have been more impactful. Sure. Yeah, we understand that. But at least, you left a mark. People have an opinion of you. People know you were there. And, for me, that's success, right? If you can achieve that level, and I think I'll equate it to this. When you're a young athlete and you're asked to go and see somebody, you might not be well, might be really sick, might even be, just a meeting with somebody. And when you're 23 or 5, and you're not always going to make the right decision, right? And you're not going to think that this is important. And it is important, right? The impact that we have on people, not just athletes, anybody, when you do something nice for somebody, you don't understand the depth of that impact, right? When you're a young person. I mean, I certainly do now, but you don't have that opportunity, right? So it is, that goes with it. I think you look back on your life and say, I'm really glad I did that. I'm really glad I put myself out there. I know that I can understand why that would have an impact. Now, I got a little bit of that when my father passed away. My mother received a few letters for some young kids that were around our age, that my dad had taken some